The situation in Niger Republic is far from settled as the junta attempts to solidify its grips on power. ECOWAS is finding new ways to restore democracy to the country, and we will also continue our series on impact of interventions rolled out by the new government in Nigeria as part of subsidy removal initiative. I am Charles Alpha, welcoming you to this week's edition of Africa Weekly. Now, Niger military leaders have appointed a new prime minister as the United States backs efforts by West African countries to restore constitutional order in that country.
The military head of state in Niger Republic has appointed the country's former Minister of Finance, Ali Mohammed Zain, as the new prime minister. Niger's former president, Mamadou Tanja, appointed Ali Zain cabinet director in 2001, then finance minister in 2002, to turn around the economic and financial situation in the country. Zain was finance minister until Mamadou Tanja was overthrown in a coup d'etat in 2010. 58-year-old Ali Zain, an economist, was once a resident representative of the African Development Bank in Chad, Cote d'Ivoire, and Gabon. In the meantime, the United States Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, says diplomacy is the preferred way to resolve the political crisis in Niger. This was after a talk between a U.S. envoy, Victoria Nuland, and the representatives of the military. Victoria Nuland, who is the acting Deputy Secretary of State, met with Niger's military leaders on Monday to push for reversal of the coup but made no headway. Blinken, however, refused to confirm a possible withdrawal of U.S. soldiers from Niger. However, heads of states and governments of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, are preparing for a summit on Thursday to discuss their standoff with the Niger junta, which deferred an August 8 deadline to reinstate ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. The possibility of military intervention is expected to top the agenda.
Now, voters in Central African Republic have approved the draft constitution that would allow President Faustin Touadéra to seek a third term as president. However, non-governmental organizations and civil society groups have accused the government of circumventing democracy. Now, the CAS, that is the Central African Republic's National Elections Authority, announced the results of the 30 July referendum with voters casting 95.27% of ballots in favor of the text. Now, turnout was put at over 61% despite the vote being boycotted by the country's main opposition parties and civil society organizations, as well as armed rebel groups. Now, the provisional results will be ratified by the Constitutional Court, scheduled to publish the definitive outcome on 27 August. And now to agriculture. Agriculture is one of the sectors that is feeling the heat of fuel subsidy removal in Nigeria. The high cost of the fuel has resulted to the increase in farming inputs affecting cost of production. But however, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu reveals short and long-term measures being taken to address the challenges.
The removal of fuel subsidy has affected prices of farming inputs such as chemicals, fertilizer, and other farming tools. This has therefore brought about concerns over possible food inflation in the country. Consequently, the federal government has identified short and long-term measures believed it will cushion the effects of subsidy removal on agricultural activities. The president in a broadcast says the administration will ensure staple foods are available and affordable nationwide. The Central Bank of Nigeria has been directed to release 200 billion naira to farmers for the cultivation of maize, rice, wheat, and cassava.
Our plan to support cultivation of 500,000 hectares of farmland and all year-round farming practice remain on course.
Farmers associations welcomed the federal government initiative.
The proposal by Mr. President to release 50 billion naira to boost rice production in Nigeria is a welcome development, and it has shown that Nigeria is now back on track as far as food production is concerned. And we want to assure Mr. President that we as rice farmers in Nigeria, we are ready, we have done it in the past, and we are going to do it.
To this end, the government is also providing 225,000 metric tons of fertilizer, seeds, and other inputs to farmers.
The group requests that the planned release of 200,000 metric tons of grains from strategic reserve to households across the 36 states and the FCT to demonstrate prices should include the leadership of NACP and NAFACAN for easy access and equitable distribution to our teaming members, who constitute the bulk of the target beneficiaries. NACP should also be part of the distribution of 225,000 metric tons of fertilizer, seedlings, and other input to farmers in order to ensure proper targeted so as to assure productive achievement of our food security agenda.
This is coming as the Federal Minister of Agriculture, under ATAS 1, commenced the distribution of farming inputs to farmers at 80% discount.
The ICT experts are going to send in the messages to the farmers so that they will come to the redemption center and show those messages on their phone. That is why we call it agro packet. You know, when they show it on the phone, it will indicate the packet they are going to pick, for which commodity and what amount of money they are going to be, 20% of it. So the farmer will pay the money to agro dealer, and then he will give him receipt while being authenticated by the ICT, and then he will take the package that has 80% subsidy.
The program, designed under the federal government and African Development Bank, is being implemented in 5 states. They are Kano, Jigawa, Sokoto, Kebbi, and Niger State.
Joining me now in the studio to examine how interventions can help agricultural sector, especially a cash crop subsector, is the president of the National Cashew Association of Nigeria, Mr. Ojo Ajanakuru. Mr. Ajanakuru, I want to say thank you very much for finding time to talk to us on Africa Weekly.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's begin by assessing the level of impact of the subsidy removal on the agricultural sector. Can you give us an assessment?
Yeah, once again, thank you for the opportunity you gave to us again to address Nigeria. The impact of subsidy removal is enormous. It has the negative and it has the positive. But the negative is hardship on our people for now. The cost of commodities have gone high outrageously. The impact is telling on our people. But we believe that if it is holistically followed, something good might come out of it in the nearest future.
Okay, so now the president has rolled out some measures of palliatives for farmers to boost food production in the face of subsidy removal. Now, how strategic is the agricultural sector in helping Nigerians cope with the impact of this policy?
Yeah, the agricultural sector, to me, I think is the whole nut of our economy. If it's given the consideration, if it's given the attention that it actually required, it can save the country from lots of challenges in terms of how to mitigate in daily human life. The sector, the palliative that the president has rolled out are germane, they are good, but however, you look at it from one angle, they are not timely in terms of agriculture. Reason being that for now we are in the harvesting season and not in the planting season. Now like I said in the beginning, I said the subsidy removal is positive and negative. Now the government has rolled out in terms of the vehicle, for instance, that the government is talking about to buy, and this is going to be buses that will be CNG, compressed natural gas, that with the price of it to be cheaper. But we are looking at how to reduce urban migration so that we can concentrate on the rural areas. Those buses, I think, is just attention to urban area alone. The rural areas needs more than what is bus. So the palliatives needs to look further to the rural areas.
So now we take a look at cash crop sector. Now the cash crop sector has been identified as vast potential for foreign exchange earnings. What kind of intervention would this sector require from the subsidy removal policy for this to work?
I would say production, increasing production. That is the key. Now that it has been identified that cash crop is the commodities that can help also in the foreign earning. Like for instance, now the palliative that was rolled out talks about 4 commodities, and these 4 commodities are looking at what the president has declared about food security. I think that is where His Excellency's focus are, believing that this can create food for us in the country. Yes, they are good, but the crops that are actually internationally trade crops are not actually cared for in this palliative. They are not addressed. Crops like cashew, which I represent, cocoa, sesame seed, in the foreign earning, those are the 3 commodities that is taking the lead. When you talk about sesame seed, it's followed by cashew sometimes, or cocoa. But those 3 commodities, those 3 cash crops are actually not addressed. I think we should look critically on those areas and see how we can use those foreign export commodities to generate foreign earning for the country.
Okay, now that you have mentioned those crops, cashew, cocoa, and the rest of them, now what are the main challenges facing the cash crop sector, like cashew production, for instance? Now, the fact that they were not highlighted in some of the crops that Mr. President said would have intervention, does it highlight the challenges that that sector is having, and what sort of intervention would you think can be done? Or even right now that the president even did not mention these crops, what would you say, in terms of these crops that you have mentioned and that have not been highlighted? Is it that there are challenges in that sector, and how can this be addressed for this set of crops to come to the limelight, where Nigeria will be able to trade in this with these crops?
Thank you. For these commodities that I mentioned, the past government program of anchor borrower did not give these commodities the privilege of growing the commodity in the country. Reason being that they are called tree crops, and that the gestation period is in between 2 years and upward. So for that they did not get, and the economic of production, EOP, of those commodities are very high. And for our farmers to be able to produce more of those crops, they need financial assistance. They need to be incorporated into what I call an agricultural scheme, where some money can be enacted for them to increase their production. They dearly need that, because the cost of interest rate for them to borrow money is very high. They don't have the capacity to pay back on this loan. More also that the crop is not a crop that you plant today and in another year you are harvesting. It takes a period, 2 years to 3 years, before you start harvesting for that crop. So the intervention they need majorly is government attention, deliberate attention I call it, that the government should deliberately invest in this sector, but when they then talk about adding value to the product, because if you produce and you're not adding value to it, like we're exporting our job. So we are interested also in adding value to this commodity, and we enjoy the government that they should look into the tax break for the people who are going to go into processing, and see what they can do to also encourage the importation of importation of tax break or the importation of equipment that we are using in the terms of processing.
All right, Mr. Ojo Ajanaku, I'd like to say now, as the president of the National Cashew Association of Nigeria, what steps are you, or what steps is your organization taking, to work with government in redefining, the sector?
We are in relationship with different ministries. We work in connection with the Ministry of Agriculture. We also work closely with the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, and we have development partners that we are working with, like Raw Material Research Development Council, Nigeria Export Promotion Council, various of them, Shippers Council. We work with many development agencies, and we discuss with them to see how we can help in growing this sector, even though their challenges are always there, that they are not well funded, or there's not enough money. We are in close relationship also with Cocoa Research Institute of Nigeria, who are in charge of the cocoa, the cashew in Nigeria, to see how we can get an input that will not take the longer period that we used to have in the past. And our farms are, the output of our farms are very low for now to compare to what our counterparts in other countries are getting. We are currently harvesting 300 kg in an hectare, whereas a country like Cambodia is harvesting 1,200 kg from 1 hectare. And so we are discussing with government to see how we can grow this so that we can harvest more from 1 hectare, we can get more product from 1 hectare. So we are working closely with development agencies, ministries of government, to see that we grow the sector. As an association, we are also working with our members, sensitizing them on what to do, on what to know, on good agricultural practices, which is GOCAP, and the good manufacturer practices. We are working on all those things with our people to see that they do what is right and they are able to manage what they have in their farm. And their expectation, we also manage their expectation by telling them that what the government is doing, what the government intention is. For now, like this sector, we don't have a national policy for it. We agitate for it, we advocate for it. The government has given us a listing here. We are going about the geopolitical zone now to organize a workshop where we harness their view, harness their suggestions, and bring it to the federal government for the growth of the sector.
All right, Mr. Ojo Ajanaku, the President, National Cashew Association of Nigeria, I want to thank you very much for talking to us there on the sector. Thanks for coming to Africa Weekly.
Thank you.
All right. The African Free Trade Zone Agreement has been identified as the pivot towards unlocking the fortune of Africa. Some legal practitioners stated this at the ongoing 2023 African Bar Association Conference in Pretoria, South Africa.
The African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is a legal instrument encouraging and promoting economic activities, including movement of goods and services among state parties. The intendment of the legal instrument is to ensure African countries trade among themselves without let or hindrance. Available statistics have shown that the African Free Trade Area is the world's largest free trade area, connecting 1.3 billion people across 55 countries who are members of the African Union. To show the commitment of the state parties to this legal instrument, 54 out of 55 countries have signed the agreement. One of the latent motives of the agreement is to create a single market for goods services being facilitated by the movement of persons as a way of deepening economic interaction on the continent. The legal instrument also promotes the Pan-African vision of evolving an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa as stipulated in Agenda 2063. As a way of promoting prompt resolution of disputes, the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement establishes a mechanism for the settlement of disputes.
The judiciary that the business people who will be involved want is a judiciary that has integrity. It's a judiciary that is competent. It's a judiciary that has experience in their fields. Business people don't want people who are going to learn on the job. They want people who are ready because they've got businesses to run, and they lose money when there are delays. So it is important, therefore, that all preparations be made, but it is important that the business community invests in our strong judiciary.
A whole new opportunity has been provided. How can we grab it and make it work better for all? The first thing is knowledge of its design and what is expected from it being already in force.
Participants at the ongoing 2023 African Bar Association Conference are of the view that political stability, judicial independence, and harmonized policies in tandem with African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement will go a long way in boosting multilateral trade on the continent.
That's our package this week on Africa Weekly. Thanks for being part of it. I am Charles Alpha. Thanks for watching.